Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. You're watching another episode of the Game in a Nutshell series designed for explaining the board game rules. My name is Branislav Berec, and in this video we're going to learn how to play a two-player game of Virtu. Now in this video I'm going to explain the major differences between the two-player version of the game and the standard game. So I assume you already know how to play the standard game. If you don't, check out my other video where I explain the base rules. You can find the link in the description of the video. So in this one, I'm only explaining how to play the game as a two-player game. So let's get started. The two-player game demonstrates a war between the King of France, represented by the blue player, and the King of Naples, represented by the yellow player. To set the game up for the King of Naples, take your palace showing the side for a two-player game with this symbol. Then the three family cards, again intended for a two-player game. Your action marker. You start the game with one agent, but because of this card you have two agents, then 4 florins, 4 troops, and you start the game with 4 cities: Naples, Rossano, Reggio and Bari, and with the Principality of Naples title tile. So place your control discs in the starting cities and 2 troops in Naples. And by the way, don't forget to use the board for 2 and 5 player games. The blue player, the French player, also starts the game with the palace, which is intended for a 2-player game. Then family cards, also having this 2-player icon in the top right corner. Then the action marker, only 1 agent, 4 florins, 4 available troops, and then only 2 starting cities and 3 title tiles: the Kingdom of France, cannons and the Duchy of Milan. Place 2 blue troops in both of the starting cities, so that means the blue player has 4 troops available on the map and 4 troops in their reserve, so 8 troops in total. And then set up the components for the major cities. Place 1 white control disc in Rome and 1 in Civitavecchia and 1 white troop in Rome. Then 1 red control disc in Florence and Pisa with 1 troop in Florence, and 1 green control disc in Venice, Ravenna and Corfu with 1 troop in Venice and Ravenna. Then place the influence board nearby and place the control discs of all 3 major cities on their starting positions. The red starting position is here, here's for the green one, and this is the starting position for the white major city. Then place the corresponding components for each of the major city. Use 2 family cards, again with the icon for a 2-player game. Then the city tiles for the starting cities, and note that the green player also uses this Ravenna as a neutral city tile. And then white and red major cities gain 1 troop and 1 agent for recruiting later in the game, and a green major city only 2 troops. Then from the notables, remove Pope from the game, and also this stack of cards, Maestro, with the sponsor action, which is not available in a 2-player game. And only use 2 guild tiles, and then the Principality of Milan tile, the Duchy of Naples and 1 kingdom. Then the turn order and the alliances are not used in a 2-player game, so you can cover them with the prestige board. And finally, place 1 cathedral token on this round track. And similar to 3 to 5 player games, take your family cards now and place them in your palace in any way you want. And that's the setup for a 2-player game. The 2-player game is played over 21 rounds, and the French player always goes first, so that's why there's no need for a turn order track. Because of the title styles, both players start with 1 additional courtier space available. On the other hand, there is no city track, so you don't unlock additional courtier space by conquering the 5th city. Since there is not only no city track but also no patronage track, therefore the action with this icon, that's the sponsor action, doesn't exist in a 2-player game. And that's the reason why this action space is completely empty at the start of the game. However, when you play this Annex action, You have now two options. You can annex a neutral city using the standard rules from the 3 to 5 player games, and you can influence the major cities. You can do one or the other or both during the same action. There are 3 major cities in the game: Rome, Florence and Venice, and they all have some other cities they control. In order to influence a major city, you have to spend crowns. For each crown symbol you spend, you move the marker towards your side of this influence board. To influence Rome, you may use crowns or cross symbols. When the city marker is in this neutral central area, it has a neutral posture towards both players. And that means when you move your troops to the major city with a neutral posture, you must end your movement there, but you are not required to initiate a siege. When both yellow and blue player end their movement in front of the city with a neutral posture, they will have to do the battle on the plains, but then the winning player does not have to initiate the siege against this city. When the major city marker enters this area, it becomes favorable towards that player, so here towards the blue player, and hostile towards the yellow player. If the major city is favorable to you, you don't have to end your movement in that city, you may continue through. If you have the troops in the city which is favorable to you and hostile to your opponent, if that opponent initiates the siege, your troops must defend that city. Since the red major city is now hostile to the yellow player, when the yellow player ends the movement in this city, the yellow player must initiate a siege. When the major city marker is in this alliance zone on your side of the influence board, you can form a permanent alliance with that city, but you have to spend your entire action to do so. So that means you may not move your marker to that zone and then immediately form an alliance. It must be in the alliance zone at the start of your action. When you form the alliance with that major city, you gain the family cards of that major city, which you must place immediately in the available courtier spaces. Add the city tiles, which are still under control of that major city, into your domain with the available side up. And you also take control of the agent and troops of that major city. Then permanently remove that major city marker from the influence board. When you take the scheme action, in addition to the usual options, you may also place one of your agents on one major city on this influence board, as long as that city doesn't have an agent yet. The agent on the major city here effectively cancels the first symbol the opponent uses on that track. So, for example, if the yellow player would like to move this green marker to the right, if that player uses 2 crown symbols, the first one is ignored and only the second one moves the marker 1 space forward. Furthermore, players are not allowed to form permanent alliances with the enemy agent on that city marker. When resolving the sieges, you gain a trophy every time you gain control of a city controlled by your opponent. That also includes major cities which have formed the alliance with your opponent. When you conquer such city, you also gain a trophy. However, at the end of the game, you don't score 2 prestige points, but only 1 prestige point for each trophy. Then, when the major city is in the neutral zone and both players end their movement in front of that city, they have to perform the battle on the plains, and then the victor may decide to continue with the siege, or that player may simply stay in front of the city without besieging it. They don't have to retreat. If that major city is hostile towards one player and favorable towards the other, the hostile player must initiate a siege and the favorable player must defend that city. So in this example, during the siege, yellow player would be the attacker and these blue troops would act as if it was the red troop. If you win the siege against a major city, which still has a marker on the influence board, meaning that major city has not formed an alliance with your opponent, you obviously gain control of that city. However, you immediately lose 4 influence with that major city. If you win a siege against a capital of the major city, so against Rome or Florence or against Venice, you eliminate that major city, you immediately lose 1 influence with all the remaining major cities, and if the eliminated major city was not allied with your opponent yet, you remove all the components of that major city from the game, and it is no longer possible to influence this major city. If you conquer that capital, but the major city already formed an alliance with your opponent, meaning those red components are basically considered to be blue components, the game continues as usual. If you are defeated during the siege or during the battle on the plains, you are allowed to retreat to an adjacent city, which is either allied or favorable to you. So in this case it could be a green city, meaning these yellow troops can retreat to the Ravenna city. There are small changes for the winter phase as well. You only pay salaries in round 4, 8, 12, 16 and 20. That's why there is this small X symbol here. And when you pay the salaries, you must pay the salaries for your own troops and also for all other allied troops. So troops of the major cities which have been already allied with you. This time you have to pay 1 florin for every 2 troops, rounded up. So you would have to pay 1 here as well. And if the red major city would be allied with the blue player, you would also have to pay 1 florin for this 1 red troop. If you have an alliance with one of the major cities, during the recruiting you can also recruit available troops of that major city, but only in their starting city, and obviously only if you control that city. You can do that for 1 florin, and you can only recruit these troops in that capital city of that major city. You may not recruit them anywhere else. Since the allied troops are essentially under your control, they are your own troops, when they are eliminated, they become available for recruiting later in the game, but again only in the capital city of that major city. The game lasts exactly 21 rounds, and at the end of the 21st round the game is over. When calculating the prestige points, you gain 1 prestige point for each city under your control, including the allied cities. That's indicated on this prestige board here. Then the player with the most cross symbols gains 2 prestige points. In case of a tie, no player gains these prestige points. Then you gain 1 prestige point for each of your trophies, and you also gain prestige points from tiles and cards in your palace. Then the player with the most prestige points is the winner, and in case of a tie, the yellow player, the Naples, win. However, there is one special condition for the automated victory. If France controls Naples at the end of the round, France automatically wins the game regardless of the current round and regardless of who has more prestige points. So that's how you play Virtu in a 2-player game. If you have any questions or comments, I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. If you like the series, please subscribe. You can support the channel on the Patreon page. You've been watching Game in a Nutshell. My name is Branislav Berec and hope to see you next time. I would like to thank everyone who has ever supported the channel, and especially the current supporters listed on this page. If you too would like to support the channel in creation of videos like this and other video tutorials and other content on this channel, please visit the patreon.com/Nithrania.